All right, we're back broadcasting live at the Toms River Auto Group studio right here in Northfield. Billy Schweim, Mike Carlin, and my producer Nikki Earnshaw as we're coming in with the song Lose Yourself by Eminem, which is Nikki's selection for this championship that we're doing between Roxanne by the Police and Lose Yourself by Eminem. Now, Mike, it's March Madness, and I couldn't think of a better guest to have than our first guest today. He's won the national championship in 2002 at his alma mater.
Yes.
How cool is that? Yeah. But you know what really is cool? What's cooler than that? The fact that he's a Collingswood High School graduate. He's in their Hall of Fame. He's in numerous Hall of Fames. But I'm getting ready to get inducted into the Collingswood High School Hall of Fame, so I thought, I'm going to reach out to Coach Williams. So let's go to the Toms River Volkswagen Sports Hotline and welcome in National Championship head coach of the Maryland Terrapins, Gary Williams. Good morning, Gary.
Billy, good morning.
How you doing, Coach? Coach, I got to tell you, is this March Madness or what?
Yeah, it's unbelievable how the tournament works. It seems like every year there's games that, no one in their right mind could ever pick correctly. So usually if you have a big pool, somebody wins it that really does not know anything, current about college basketball. I remember one year when I was in Maryland coaching, our secretary didn't know anything about basketball, which was a good thing because, everybody else knows everything about, the games and everything. And so we gave her the color of each teams in the tournament. And she picked by the colors she liked the most in each game, like she liked brown over blue or whatever. And she came in third out of about 50 people in the pool.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I got to tell you, I like to see the upsets in this tournament. I mean, this is what this tournament's all about, right? Lower seeds, guys that were not looked at by Division I schools for whatever reason, and then coming into this tournament and seeing some of these big upsets, and the biggest one I could think of is Oakland over Kentucky, Calipari's team. I mean, we just played Jay Wright's response to what Calipari's going through. But why is it seem like there's bigger upsets this year than any other year?
Well, I think every year has their big upsets. This year so far, it's like you said, major upsets. But part of that is pressure. In other words, if you're Kentucky. We played there a couple of times, and the pressure in that state, I mean, there is nothing in that state. It's like Ohio State football.
Right.
It's the same thing. There's nothing in that state as big as or as important to the people in that state. And the players feel that. In other words, you play regular season, you play like 30 games nowadays, and, you get upset one game. People aren't happy, but it's not that big a deal. But the players know if they lose that first game, especially a game like that to Oakland, people, they take that personally the whole next year or whatever. And, what Calipari's going through, it's worse there than a lot of places because there's nothing in Kentucky to distract you from Kentucky basketball, and that's the problem.
Coach, it's Mike Carlin. It's a pleasure to have you on. I'm supposed to be the basketball guru here, so
yeah. Gary Williams, a basketball guru.
Right. No, my point is, I'm just thrilled to be here talking to you, but I want to make sure our listeners know exactly who they're listening to. So you're talking about a guy that grew up in Collingswood, okay, on the outside, playing on the outside courts in Camden. Okay. Then he goes on to Woodrow Wilson, wins the state championship.
Right.
Then he moves on to Lafayette, and we're going to get into Coach Tom Davis, your relationship with him and what happened after that. But the things that he accomplished at Maryland, okay, you're winning the national championship, 11 straight years going to the tournament.
That's amazing.
He's in the Hall of Fame in the national basketball and the college, same year.
Right.
He goes in. I mean, just one thing after another. But anybody you talk to about Coach Williams, they'll tell you two things. Passionate about the game. And if you watched them, he was very passionate.
Right.
And he was fiery.
Right.
I mean, you better know what you're doing at all times, whether you're a player, whether you're the referees, doesn't matter. He's going to get on you if you're wrong. But, Coach, some of the things that you've done, especially your relationship with Dr. Tom Davis. So he was an assistant at Maryland, I believe, when you were at Maryland, and that's what got you to Lafayette to kickstart your career?
Yeah, he was a very successful high school coach in Wisconsin, came to Maryland to get his doctorate. He wanted to get into college coaching, didn't know how to do it, so he thought if he had his doctorate, he'd be in a better position to do that. So my last year I played at Maryland, he wasn't on the staff, but he was there in Cole Fieldhouse every day watching practice. So gradually we started talking after practice and everything. And then my coach, Bud Milliken, was let go after my senior year. That's how good of a player I was. And then Tom became the staff with Tom Young, very successful coach at Rutgers and other places. They came there as assistants to a guy named Frank Fellows, who was Bud Milliken's assistant. So after 2 years, they got rid of Frank Fellows and brought in Lefty Driesell. And so Tom Davis and Tom Young became the head coach and assistant coach at American U. Tom Young had Kermit Washington, 20 rebounds, 20 points a game. Tom Davis got the Lafayette job off of that. And when he was hired in 1971, he hired me as his assistant coach, going back to our relationship with each other at Maryland. Now, the funny part of the Lafayette job, I turned it down like 3 different times. I mean, we were going to have good teams at Woodrow Wilson there in Camden every year. And so I was very happy to be a high school coach and go to Ocean City in the summertime or Atlantic City or whatever, you know. I mean, that was all good. And but he came to my house and he told me, he said, look, do you ever want to be a college coach? I said, well, in the back of my mind, I thought about it. And he said, who else do you know? I said, well, I really don't know anybody in the business. He said, well, this is a chance to get into Division I coaching at Lafayette College. I said, great, I guess I'll do it. And he said, but one thing, you have to be the head soccer coach because the only money in the budget back then was the soccer coach, and he left. So I got to take soccer and be the assistant basketball coach. And they only had one assistant basketball coach then. So that's how I got into it. I learned so much from Tom. It was incredible. He was a very smart guy, still living in Iowa. And you look at his run at Lafayette, Boston College, Stanford, Iowa, and then Drake, and just tremendous career.
We're talking with head coach of the Maryland Terrapins in 2002 national championship coach Gary Williams. You also two-time ACC coach of the year. The tournament, winning the tournament, looking back on the tournament, winning at your alma mater, that had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it was, because we had to build that thing back up. Maryland had gone through some problems and bias dying, and the next coach wasn't successful after Lefty Driesell, so we had a lot of work to do my first 3 or 4 years, and to come back and win it, all that time, effort, my staff, myself put in, the players, that certainly made it special.
Hey, Coach, going back to the winning that championship, I read that you didn't have one McDonald All-American on your team. Was that on purpose, or what was your philosophy with that?
No, it wasn't on purpose. When you play Duke and Carolina every year in the ACC, twice each, or maybe 3 at the ACC tournament, they had them. So yeah. you would want to have them on your team. But what we got players who were really good in high school. There's 24 McDonald's All-Americans. Give me the next 24 and we'll go play. It's like they're not the only good players in the country. So we were able to get really good guys who were willing to work. And back then you could build a team. I'm not sure you can do that now. But back then you could get a guy that was freshman, and gradually by the time he was a junior, he became as good as any McDonald's All-American you would play against. And that's what we had. We had juniors and seniors in 2001 when we went to the Final Four, in 2002 when we won it.
So, Coach, you leave Maryland as the winningest coach of all time. You pass Lefty. You go to BC, and I was telling Billy before we went on air today, some of the other coaches that were at BC is like a who's who.
Right.
When you think of Bob Cousy was the coach at
Really?
BC. Chuck Daly was a coach at BC. Dr. Tom Davis was a coach at BC. Jim O'Brien.
Wow.
And Coach Williams, all coming from BC. Coach, so you've been at ACC, Big East, and the Big Ten. Is there a big difference between those three, or are they pretty much, I don't want to say the same, but is one more physical than the other, is more fast? Like in football, it's pretty easy to say the SEC is
so
fast.
describe the difference between those three conferences.
The Big Ten's a physical. But in basketball, did you see a big difference between those three?
Well, in '82, I went to BC. The Big East had just been a conference for 3 years, and we had just moved into Madison Square Garden for the conference tournament, and ESPN had come on the air, and they needed programming, and so all of our games were national TV, and that's what jump-started the Big East. And you had Chris Mullin, you had Patrick Ewing, you had stars in that conference that really appealed to people. So that league at that time in 85, Villanova won it. That was the wild game against Georgetown when Villanova shot 80-some% from the field. And then in 83, I guess it was, that Georgetown won the thing. And so the league was very good. And then I went to the Big Ten, and Indiana won it in 87, and Michigan won it in 89. And then coming to Maryland, UNC won it, I think, 93, and Duke had won it back-to-back in 91 and 92. So, coaching those three conferences, and I consider myself very fortunate because I got a chance to coach against basically every good coach in the country during the time I was in those, Bobby Knight, Judd Heathcote, going back, those guys were, in the Big Ten. Tom Davis was in there. The Big East, you go Rolly Massimino, John Thompson, Jim Boeheim, Rick Pitino, you go right down the list. And so every game you played was a war. It was just the way it was back then, and it was different. Coaches knew each other a lot better. There weren't a lot of private jets back then and things like that, and so you knew guys, you knew people, and it was crazy. It was really crazy, but it was. I feel very fortunate that I got the opportunity, and it all goes back to Tom Davis persuading me not to be a high school coach, but to become a college coach.
We're talking with 2002 National Championship head coach of the Maryland Terrapins, Coach Gary Williams, also a Collingswood High School graduate. We're getting ready to go into the my brother Bobby and I are getting ready to go into the Collingswood High School Hall of Fame on April 13th, and pretty cool to have that honor at our alma mater. But Coach, how hard was it to recruit when you were coaching in the ACC? I'm sure every other coach was knocking on the same players' doors that you were.
Yeah, it was hard, but I was fortunate to coach in a pretty good area. The Baltimore-Washington area has a lot of players every year, so you might not get the best player, because the problem with that, the downside of that, was people from all over the country. You could see in 2 days, you could see 4 or 5 great players, and so coaches from the Big Ten, they were always in there recruiting. Obviously, the ACC and the Big East. So you got all that, but there was players around, and so it gave you a chance. You just had to hit it right, you didn't always see it right, but I had a guy named Juan Dixon who was he's Maryland's all-time leading scorer. He was the MVP of the Final Four in 2002. He was first-round draft choice. He was about 6'2.5", 170 pounds in high school, and he played at Calvert Hall in Baltimore. And he didn't even play point guard. He was an off guard because they had this little 5'9" guy playing point guard for him. And he wasn't really heavily recruited, but I always liked his attitude, and he could really score. And people said, well, all he can do is shoot it. Well, that's the name of the game. If you get a guy that can shoot it, that's the idea, is to put the ball in the basket. So, and he became an unbelievable player his whole time at Maryland. And, he's just an outstanding young man, but that you had to get a little lucky in those situations, because I think I saw some things in him, not his ability to score, because I was never a big scorer, but I saw the heart, the passion for the game, and that was always big for me in recruiting, to find guys. They had to have a certain talent level, obviously, to play in a good league, but at the same time, you wanted guys with a passion for the game. I didn't want to have to call timeout every game and tell guys they had to play harder. That's kind of wasting the time out. So I was looking for those guys that were willing to play hard every day in practice, and all of a sudden that translates into a pretty good basketball team when it comes time to play.
Coach, it's Mike again. One last thing. When I grew up in Plymouth Meeting, PA, and we used to, in Conshohocken, we had a gym called the Fellowship House. And Billy,
I was there.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Once a year, they would have a tournament, Billy,
right?
Where not the best players, not just the best players, but the coaches.
Best coaches. And
it would be a who's who. In a gym that held maybe 200 people at the most, you were on the floor.
Wow.
But when Dean Smith would walk in, Bobby Knight would walk in.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Coach Williams. It wasn't just the players. It'd be like, oh my God, because we got used as a 12-year-old kid.
Short?
Yeah, well, it was very short.
It wasn't like 94 feet, was it? It was like more like 84 feet.
Yeah, you literally were. If you were on the first floor, your feet were on the court.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was like we got used to seeing all the Big Five coaches.
Then all of a sudden,
all of a sudden, you'd see guys walking in from now, like, dang, they're coming to Conshohocken for this, and it was. But thank you for being part of that, because I'll never forget it.
Hey, it was right off the Schuylkill Expressway. You couldn't miss it.
Exactly right.
Hey, Coach Williams, who you like?
Great. I mean, as a coach, you like things like that too. In other words, you walk into certain places, and the tradition is there, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I grew up in South Jersey. I knew about the Conshohocken tournament, things like that, and all of a sudden, I'm a coach walking in there. That was pretty neat to do.
All right, Coach, real quick, who do you like? Who do you think's? I mean, UConn. Everybody likes UConn. North Carolina is still in Purdue. This Zach Edey, he dropped 30 last night. Who do you like moving forward?
Well, I think UConn and Houston. You look at those two teams; they both do the same thing. They come after you defensively. If you're going to beat them, you got to match their intensity. You got to match their toughness. And I think they have a little edge on everybody else. Obviously, Purdue, Big Ten. Watched a lot of that this year. Edey's unbelievable. He's unique to college basketball. But, there's times where Purdue lets teams back in games so far and things like that. They don't just stomp you like UConn and Houston both try to do. And I think that's the attitude you need in the NCAA tournament. You can't have an off night in the NCAA tournament. And
right.
I think those two UConn and Houston can win with their defense. I think they're the only two that I see that if they had really bad shooting nights, they could still win games against really good teams.
All right, Coach, we really appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday to join us here in the locker room, and hopefully maybe we'll see you on April 13th at the Collingswood High School Hall of Fame banquet. But if not, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, congratulations on the Hall of Fame.
I appreciate
it. Cool night when I went in, and enjoy that night.
That's the first night I met you, because I believe I interviewed you there for my program. But, Coach, once again, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you very much.
There he is, national champion head coach
Beautiful.
of the 2002 Maryland Terrapins, Coach Gary Williams. And he's a Collingswood graduate. I love it, man.
I mean, some of the things that he won, like 11 straight years. Yeah, we got to wrap it up.
All right. The first hour of the locker room is powered by Surety. I wish we could keep going and going.
I
could talk to him for 2 hours. The first hour of the locker room is powered by Surety Title. Surety provides comprehensive title insurance protection and professional settlement services for home buyers and sellers, real estate agents, brokers, lenders, home builders, developers, and attorneys to facilitate your real estate purchases. From the shore to Center City and every place in between, Surety Title is there for you with 15 office locations in New Jersey and PA. That's Surety Title. For more information, call my good friend Ron Conklin at 856-988-8900 or give the Ocean City office a call at 609-399-1227. Just about everybody in our area has heard about the Jersey Man and Philly Man magazine that is run by ex-Philadelphia tight end Ken Dunnick. But were you aware of their private business network they call the Legacy Club? Every month they hold private events at upscale locations in Philadelphia and South Jersey that attract over 200 top business people. If you have an interest in attending one of these events and see it's a fit for your business, send an email to ken@jerseymanmagazine.com or give him a call at 856-912-4007 for more information. All right, when we return, we'll wrap up hour number one. You're listening to The Locker Room with Billy Schweim right here on 97.3 ESPN.